I am just going to hold for just a moment to allow for any others to join before we get started.
Do you want us to use video or not?
It's up to you. Whatever you're comfortable with.
All right.
Okay, I'll turn off my camera and mic. This is Madeline.
Hi, Madeline. Thanks for coming again.
Okay.
We're just holding just for a moment to allow any others to join before we get started. And I'll go ahead and get this started. This might be a relatively quiet office hour session, and that is okay. But I want to welcome you all and thank you for joining this office hour session for the FY 2023 CINR funding opportunity. And the first thing I want to mention is that this meeting is being recorded. So if you don't consent to being a part of that recording, then you might want to log off this conference now. The Office of Nuclear Energy is providing this office hours opportunity to allow the university community to interact with federal and technical points of contact. And there's three main objectives in holding these office hour sessions. And those objectives are to better understand the ongoing programmatic activities, to ask and receive clarifications about what fits within the Office of Nuclear Energy's mission and the relevant topic areas, and also to build better communication between the universities and the programs. So when you're asking questions, keep those objectives in mind, and also keep in mind that relevancy this year will focus much more heavily on the mission of the Office of Nuclear Energy and what topics fit within that mission space. And please understand that the work scopes this year are intentionally left very broad. And the intention there is to allow for a wide variety of topics and ideas that are relevant to NE's mission with much less focus on specific programmatic needs. So if there are questions, I'll ask you to navigate to the top of your Teams screen and use the reactions button at the top to raise your hand, and we will call on those who have their hands raised. But before doing that, the program managers that we have present today, I believe, are Matthew Hahn and also Ken Keller. And this office hour session is covering the work scopes FL-2, FL-3, and FL-4 in topic area 3, which is fuels. So Matthew and Ken, do you have anything that you'd like to share to kick us off, or would you like to provide a brief overview of your work scopes?
Sure. This is Ken. In the area of advanced fuels, we are looking at kind of an evolutionary approach. Historically, we had the fast flux test facility and EBR2, and we're really basing our searches forward from the EBR2 success, kind of a metal fuel, uranium, 10% zirconium fuel meat, stainless steel cladding, and that's kind of a baseline. So we want to approach a licensing approach where we make that fuel basically licensable with the NRC through documenting our experience with that fuel and writing appropriate reports and technical papers on it. However, we know if we have a future with fuel like that, fast fuel that would be reprocessed, we want to advance the performance of that fuel. So that's where the evolutionary part is. So we want to establish the baseline of this legacy EBR2 fuel, and then we want to advance it through a wide range of technological approaches. And that's about it for right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Matthew, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to offer before we open it up for questions?
Happy to do that. Yeah, so my name is Matt Hahn. I'm the federal manager for the TRISO Fuels program. Not too unlike what Ken just shared, we have the AGR program, which has involved a series of manufacturing, irradiation, and post-irradiation examination of TRISO fuels. And the goal being to submit at the end a series of topical reports that will enable the NRC and industry to license advanced reactor concepts. And with that, we're aware that industry is maybe broadening, I would say, upon the specific TRISO particle design that was employed in the AGR program. So insofar as this call goes, we would be interested in work that, supplements what we've done and supports what, some of the various things that industry is doing right now. That's all I've got for now.
Great, thanks, Matt. So with that, we'll open it up for questions. So if any of the audience has any questions, go ahead and use the reactions icon to raise your hand. And we'll give a little time, so in case questions formulate. And it looks like we have one person raised their hand. Samrat, go ahead and come off mute and ask your question, please.
Hi. So I'm interested in the number 4, the topic 4 of the fuel category, FL-4. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, and FL-4 is the other fuels topic category. Yes.
Yeah. So what are the what kind of topics you are interested in this particular category? I mean, is it a some kind of concept fuel is allowed in this category?
This is Madeline Felton. I'll speak up for Frank, who can't make it today. We don't really need to have new fuel concepts per se. Accident tolerant fuel and the advanced fuel campaign information is cited in the references for the NEUP, and you can also get those online from the Idaho National Laboratory. So you could try to put in, oh, this is my new fuel concept, etc., but that's not really germane to what we need for the program. The accident tolerant fuel concepts areas for the Department of Energy are well documented and promulgated in the system. You can also go online on nuclearenergy.gov and get the nuclear.gov and get the reports. Right now we're discussing the TRISO fuel. We have the program plans, and Matt Hahn can get that for you, or you can contact me. I'm Madeline Feltus at nuclearenergy.gov. And so what particular concept do you want to focus on?
We are thinking about some kind of nanostructured fuel. This is for FL-4. I understand FL-2 is for TRISO fuel, right?
Right.
And
F1, we discussed yesterday, was for accident tolerant fuel. The nanostructured fuel is not something we're supporting per se at this point. You can put it in, but we really have to focus on program focused concepts. So I would also make a comment that you need to look at previous NAUP abstracts for awards. We've had some nanostructured fuels projects initiated over the past 6 years. So you may want to go to that website and look at the already funded work in that area so that you don't duplicate what we've already done before. So.
Okay.
Ken,
Go ahead.
Ken here, I have a different take on a different category of fuels. As far as nanostructures, as far as like there's a cladding we're very interested in, which is I guess technically a nanostructure, ODS, oxide dispersed strength.
Right.
So that's a nanostructure. That's the cladding. That's not the fuel itself. So and in this case, ODS, it's a great metal, but we just can't get it in a shape we need and retain the ODS. One thing I would just alert you for nanostructures, please consider the hostile environment that the fuel goes in. I've seen nanostructure ideas that would get blown away in the first 10 minutes in a core. I believe the other is in every category of NAUP now, and that's the idea of I'll just keep this generic. That's the idea of allowing creative thoughts out in the universities. Just bear in mind that as mentioned in the briefing, the criteria is relating to mission. So by all means propose some off the wall radical idea, but be confident that it will tie into our mission, that we'll say, wow, we never thought of this before, and it seems very relevant to our mission. So that's my 2 cents on that question.
Yeah, so for the nanostructure, we are talking about the fuel, not the cladding material. It's the fuel itself. Okay,
sure. If you think it's some beneficial trait, I don't know what you will achieve with it, but sure, if you can make a case that it will add some attribute to the fuel without and be manufacturable and be economical, or at least be envisioned that it could eventually become manufacturable and economical and have a benefit, sure, go for it.
Okay, so my next question is that for radiation, do you need neutron irradiation or ion irradiation is okay?
I'll chime in just we absolutely prefer proposals that have prototypic radiation as part of it. Ion radiation is not it's not established. It carries with it a significant lack of prototypical aspects, right? So certainly open to ion radiation, but just be aware you'll have to address the challenges that come with ion radiation.
Okay.
Can I make a comment on that? This is Dr. Feltus again. If you're proposing ion irradiation, at your university, remember that we would have to have a neutron irradiation to benchmark against it. But if you were to make samples, test it, show that it doesn't, crumble under proton irradiation, you could later apply for an NSUF, the National Scientific Facility grant, to have a time in a reactor, like ATR, HIFER, MIT, etc.,
Right.
so that it could be done later. But one of the problems of setting up a proposal where you say, I'm going to make it and I'm going to get it into the reactor, you're not going to be able to get all that done and get it paid for with a NEUP grant in 3 years, because it takes a while to get the capsules, and the real estate at the ATR is very well used. So I would suggest that you do what you want to do, and then make the samples ion radiated for passing the HAHA test. In other words, it's a screening test. And then perhaps later you can win an UF award to have it irradiated in one of the neutron irradiation facilities. So that's a suggestion.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Samrat, thank you for your questions. And during part of that conversation, I do actually just want to provide a clarification on some of the information, because while ideas or project ideas or topics that are in alignment to the program needs are definitely relevant and should be submitted, also should be submitted are those ideas that are not necessarily aligned with programmatic needs, but are still aligned with the mission of the Office of Nuclear Energy. So that is a distinction I wanted to make that's unique to this year's CINR call. So I mentioned at the very beginning that relevancy would be looked at a little bit different this year, and the emphasis would be placed on the alignment within the mission of the Office of Nuclear Energy, and very much less so on specific programmatic needs. So I just wanted to make that clarification. It also aligns with what I said earlier about these work scopes are intentionally broad this year to capture all of those ideas that are a need of the program, and also those ideas that aren't necessarily a need of the program, but still align with the NE mission space. So I hope that point is clear.
Yeah, I mean, it needs some clarification. Thank you for the clarification, because this is new this time.
It is.
So
yes.
We don't know how broad you are looking at, right? How much of a new idea you are looking at. That's what I wanted to check with you, actually. Yeah, thank you.
Right. And so as you submit applications and propose ideas, it's very important for you to make a strong case about how your idea fits within the mission of the Office of Nuclear Energy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
and this is one reason why I think Anna can, and the NEOP team can explain this. Letters of intent are very important, because if you write that well, so we can understand what you're thinking, we can give you a go, no go. Because I used to be a professor, in the Stone Ages, and it takes a lot of work to get a proposal together and get it through the research office and get all the funding information put together. And so the letters of intent are very important, so that you can see whether or not the concept would fly. So please be as descriptive as you can in the short letters of intent, so we can understand what you're thinking, please.
Yeah, and to clarify that point, Madeline, letters of intent are only for CINR, they're only required for NSUF applications.
Right.
And yeah, and the deadline for those have already passed. So letters of intent are not required for the R&D work scopes.
Okay, so they dropped that. So, all right, so then he'll have to do the full proposal at risk.
Yeah, there's a pre-application process, which those pre-applications are due October 11th.
Well, that's what I meant, the pre-application
Yeah.
abstracts are what I was
Yes.
addressing, not necessarily quote unquote letters of intent. But the
Right.
idea here is that the short synopsis of what you want to do, please be as explicit as you can, so that we can understand whether or not it will fit.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we had a few others join, so we are opening this up for questions. And if there are any questions, you can raise your hand using the reactions button at the top of your Teams screen. So we will pause for a moment until we have another question, or give you all some time to formulate additional questions. And Samrat, I know your hand is still up. It might just be from your last question, but if you have an additional question, feel free to ask.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ling Feng, go ahead and come off mute and ask your question, please. Hello.
Hi, Anna. This is Ling Feng. I'm associate professor at the North Carolina State University. I just joined from Idaho National Lab last month. So I have a question about general, maybe regarding maybe two topic. One is for the tricycle fuel. So I think in the proposal, I think the core more focus on maybe tricycle fuel synthesis, fabrication, and radiation, or maybe other performance in like typical environments. So my question is. Do you think if we propose something related with the tricycle, like in the new type of reactor, for example, molten salt reactor, so do you think we should using the typical the tricycle we used, or we should also think about something like a tricycle with different form? For example, like the ultra safe. I think the companies are using like all ceramic, like capsule instead of with a multi-layer, like with graphite and silicon carbide. So this is one question for the community. Yeah.
I'll address that because I was historically the PM for that.
Okay.
The molten salt version is with Kairos. They're using the same triso particles and the same thicknesses, and UltraSafe is doing the same thing. It's an engineered particle, and we've spent what's the 18 years on this. And there is an NRC topical. We submitted a topical through EPRI to the NRC. So any new concepts that you want to come up with that are outside that those parameters in terms of size, thicknesses, and things like that would have to be performance tested, go through the whole 9 yards, and also a topical put in there. So if you're coming up with a new reactor design that would use triso particles, that should be submitted under the NE5 Advanced Reactors Programs topics. If you are trying to come up with a new triso particle, we're not really interested in the thorium particles per se. There are other kernel concepts for deep burn and things like that, but the changing the thicknesses of the coatings, the inner and outer pilot of carbon and the silicon carbide, isn't going to work. We've seen concept where people want to add an extra layer on the inside, but have failed to realize that if you, let's say, if you put boron in there, you're going to create, not only alpha particles, but you're going to create gases that are going to actually raise the pressure much higher than what the particles can handle. So you need to be extremely careful about trying to reinvent a wheel here. So I'll ask this question again. What specific thoughts are you having about reinventing triso? We're really looking for, improved fabrication.
So I just try to kind of understand further the call. So I don't really like propose a kind of new type of triso, but I'm trying to understand the triso, especially the interaction with spatial environments, for example, molten salt, right? And my concern is if we invest something like, for example, the triso is not perfect. So it could potentially like got damaged in some case, for example, under radiation enclosure environments, correct? But if in that case, if we try something not good happen, but we try to understand that behavior, do you think this is something will be interesting for the program or the DOE mission? But I'm not sure about the industry partners.
I think you need to look at the historical documents and the public, and Matt, you can chime in here too, the public, and the topical that was put in that gives a full understanding. And you can, check out the work, look for triso under the NRC website and find out all the licensing questions and answers. Also be aware that we have had about at least 12 years of TRISO NEUPs. And the Kairos design was initially started by University of California, Berkeley, by Per Peterson. And also MIT was looking at this as well. So we had a lot on the molten salt issues in terms of corrosion and whatnot. They're using a pebble form rather than a compact form. So it may be best to look at the abstracts by year and search for the word TRISO, and you'll probably come up with at least 30 to 35 TRISO NEUPs that we put in on the past. So this would help you prevent duplication.
Thank you.
Matt,
Thank you, Matt. Yeah. I'd like to point out, actually, I'm working on some of the PIE of the TRISO, actually. So they
I know.
actually, so I work on some of the PIE and also some TRISO related with molten salt. So I know the situation. So my concern is, but I already mentioned it, but I don't want to maybe repeat that. But that's okay.
Well, what you might want to do is contact Matt Hahn, who's the PM at this point.
Okay.
If you have new PIE methods that you're thinking of for this, I would suggest that you contact Isabella Van Mooyen.
Okay, yeah.
At Idaho, because we've had an extensive set of PIE methods developed for looking at all sorts of things for TRISO fuel over the last 18 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you anyway for your answers. Yeah, another question is maybe with the metallic fuel, do you think for general metallic fuel, UZIC or UP-UZIC, whatever, so do you think if we try to understand the radiation behavior, for example, how the radiation affects the degradation of a thermal property, even mechanical property, or like fuel cladding chemical interactions, do you think this will be something as a program will be interesting to?
Absolutely. The fuel cladding chemical interaction right now is considered one of the most limiting aspects of metal fuels. So we're very interested in understanding that process, that phenomena, and more importantly, seeing techniques used to mitigate that and add life. We are looking at the idea of liners, getters. None of these seem perfect, but those are I don't want to limit you to liners and getters.
Mm-hmm.
But we're very interested in the fuel cladding chemical interaction.
I see. So the fuel cladding chemical interaction, but another question is about the fuel itself, like the degradation of the property, for example, thermal property and mechanical property of the metallic fuel.
That doesn't seem like an area of high concern. There's I guess because the cladding degradation is such a limiting factor that there's not much concern for the mechanical properties of the fuel itself. The thermal conductivity is high. I guess if there was some phenomena, I'm not a fuel expert, if there was a phenomena that seriously degraded the fuel conductivity and would then change accident scenarios, but I'm not aware of that being a concern. I believe the conductivity, stays pretty good throughout the life of this fuel. So that's about the only feedback I can give at this point.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Carol, for your feedback. Thank you, Ken.
Okay.
Okay. I think that's my question.
Thank you, Lingfeng.
Yeah. Thank you.
Also, Julie has posted in the chat the NEUP@inl.gov email address. And in the funding opportunity announcement, it specifically asks that if there's any questions from applicants to utilize this email address rather than going directly to federal points of contact for questions. So if there's any additional questions after this session, Please feel free to email those to neup@inl.gov, and those will be sent to the appropriate point of contact, and an answer will be given to you, and answers will also be placed in our question and answer document on the NEUP site, which is made available to the entire NEUP community. So with that, do we have additional questions? We'll wait for a moment to allow for any additional questions that might come in. Great, and we do have one. So Yi, go ahead and come off mute and go ahead and ask your question, please.
Thank you, Anna. This is E from Purdue University. I have a question to Ken about the FL-3 metallic field. So talking about FCCI, field cladding chemical interaction problem, we know basically there are several ideas like using the liner getters to stop lanthanides. We also found that we have some colleagues found that using the liquid sodium-free concept, the annual field, that we have a significantly mitigated FCCI, as lanthanides will not dissolve in the sodium since there is sodium free, so they will not dissolve and migrate to the cladding and deposit there. We also did using the dopant additive to stabilize lanthanides forming compound inside the field. So since there are different ideas to mitigate FCCI effects, is there any preference about those several concepts?
Well, if there truly is a case where eliminating sodium helps eliminate the migration towards the cladding, that's very interesting, because in the near term we are have an emphasis on sodium-free fuel, and I say the short term because we have some vendors out there trying to design reactors with once-through fuel that would just be used once. And so they're concerned with disposing of the fuel or storing it long term, let's say. And sodium generally complicates that because of the storage criteria and the rules, the safety rules associated with storing the fuel. So we have a short-term view of eliminating sodium bonding. However, in the long term, we thought sodium bonding is really great because it relieves you of mechanical tolerances and things when you're manufacturing the fuel. The thermal conductivity, you immediately have the thermal conductivity rather than waiting for fuel to swell and touch the cladding and things like that. So we were really thinking that long term we probably see sodium. But if you see a benefit from sodium free for eliminating fuel cladding chemical interaction, that's terrific, because then in the short term we want to emphasize sodium free fuels, and if this helps in the long term, that would be terrific, because that simplifies our menu of options we have to consider. If we could go completely sodium free and realize benefits from it, that'd be great. So I would encourage that.
Okay, sounds good. So actually, if we can use any experimental or simulation method to demonstrate that remove liquid sodium does not make a significant effect on thermal conductivity and also mechanical effect, actually that can make the goal, right?
I'm not, could you reframe that? I'm not sure.
Sure. So about removing sodium, right? Since currently we have no idea whether removing sodium would largely affect the thermal conductivity and also affect the mechanical interaction between fuel and cladding, right? But if we can use any method to prove such effect is not significant, and removing sodium actually can make more benefits or advantage than the disadvantages.
Yeah, that's good work. It sounds like good work. One thing that comes to mind, if you're eliminating sodium, you're taking away a waste of volume, right? And you're gaining some volume. That volume is more fuel can go in it, or you have more coolant around more flowing coolant around the fuel. So that sounds like an improvement in the state of the art or state of knowledge on advanced metal fuels.
Okay, thanks. Then my last question is about the dopant additive. So if adding the additive, it would combine with the free lanthanide forming compound, right? This would be one of the measures to mitigate FCCI. But at the same time, the additive would change some properties of the fuel. That's one of the concern. And since we would bring a new constitute into the field, that may be, bring some difficulty in getting the license of the metal field, or bring some concerns about why we should using the constitute, right? So would that be not be preferred, the dopant additive method in this concern? Yeah.
You know, every non-fuel thing in the reactor brings problems, and actually the fuel brings problems when it fissions and gives us the fission products. So it's understood. Being able to quantify that effect, I realize it's very challenging with the incredible complexity of the chemistry in the fuel with all the elements, but it's understood that every engineering solution has a negative aspect. If you could just quantify it to a degree where we know it wouldn't horribly either cause some other undesired effect or reduce the performance of the fuel or the reactor system in some way. It's understood. Everything that's not fuel brings a negative consequence. So that's to be expected.
Okay, thanks. I also noticed that the liner or getter ideas would be very good, and actually some company or vendors actually would like to adopt this idea. But my concern is I'm not sure NUP has ever awarded any metal fuel projects by using liner or getter. So in our proposal, if we take this idea, will there be any overlapping with the existing awards or awarded projects?
Yeah, you do have to be careful, and like Madeline referred to, doing the research on ongoing work, because we do have some work of liner additions. I think there's some electrical processes. There's some ink, liquid ink processes for adding liners. So you definitely want to be careful you're not overlapping. We definitely introduce the idea of a liner. You know, we want to avoid a liner. If you're going to make thousands of tubes, you want to make these tubes as simple as possible. Adding a liner is, you know, it's an extra step. It's going to add cost and complexity, and it's also a quality assurance issue where if you absolutely need complete integrity of the liner, it's a quality assurance challenge. So yes, please research carefully that you don't overlap already awarded work regarding lining cladding.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you very much. That's all I
Hey Ken, this is
Hi
Ken, this is Dan. Sorry I missed a little bit at the beginning. And one of the things I'd really encourage you to do, so those are all the things that you've discussed are active areas of R&D within the national program. I would highly recommend that you get in contact with some of the researchers that are working on those studies and looking for complementary opportunities. All of those things we have experiments in the advanced test reactor right now doing testing on. And so it could be a great chance to do something that complements that and works with it. So if you don't know who those people are, feel free to email Ken or I, and we can help connect you with them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for that question, Yi. Does anybody else have any questions? We'll pause for a moment and let any questions formulate again if there's any additional questions. And while we do that, oh, go ahead, Samrat. Thank you for raising your hand. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. So for the metallic fuel, FCCI, I mean, we had a previous NUP, we successfully completed the NUP on FCCI for adding dopants. But beside the FCCI, what other things are of interest to NUP for the metallic fuel? What are the issues of interest? Say FCMI or any other issues which will be of interest beside FCCI for metallic fuel?
Generically, it's just coming up with fuels that are manufacturable and extended life. If say we tackle the fuel cladding chemical interaction, what's the next weakness in the system? Is it fuel burnup? Is it cladding failure? For example, ODS stainless steel, ODS steels has been very attractive but elusive because we can't manufacture it. So Dan might be better at helping what's the next weakness, the time sequence of weaknesses as we try to put in fuel, get high energy, high temperatures out of it, and maximum burnup, and have it be reprocessable in the most economical and convenient way. So I'll defer to Dan if he wants to expand on that any.
Well, I'll agree with you. One, that manufacturing is a commercially viable manufacturing techniques. Excuse me, are a key thing. But also in the fuel performance side, the limiter for traditional utilization of metallic fuel is FCCI. That's where the safety limits all come from. So that's kind of the critical one. But there's other places where we're interested in constituent redistribution. So the migration of zirconium up and down the temperature gradient in the fuel. That's a pretty important one for us. As we look towards the next generation of sodium-free fuel, we're interested in FCMI at the beginning of life, right? So if we're using an annular fuel or some complex shape, the interaction between the cladding and the fuel during a transient overpower event could be the dominant failure mode. Because it's a new thing, it hasn't been looked at extensively, so we need to develop some understanding there. Also, when we're looking at creating the sodium-free system, the places that you locate the open space to accommodate swelling could be distributed in different ways, whether we do it as an annulus or we do it as fluting on the outside of the pins or even distributed throughout. Evaluating all those means we need to know something about radiation creep. And how does the fuel creep into those spaces and affect the local FCMI and potentially distort the fuel pin into non-cylindrical shapes and things like that. So there's quite a bit of stuff like that. On the microstructural side, there are a lot of things we'd be interested in. In fact, the team, so Luca Capriati and Walter Williams, just finished a milestone report that's looking at the gaps in all those areas of understanding, kind of to guide the R&D going forward. That hasn't been published publicly yet, but it might be available before too long. If you contacted one of those two technical leads, they may be able to share that information.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dan. Thank you, Samrat. Do we have any additional questions? Looks like we have about 15 more minutes, so we can gladly take any questions that might arise within that time frame. And while we're waiting for a moment, just to point out that in the chat, I placed the URL for the resources link. So using that link, you will be able to access the funding opportunity announcement, question and answer documents regarding each of these work scopes, the recordings for all of the office hour sessions, and other materials like that. So I'll ask for a final call for questions. And I'll give another minute or two before we conclude this office hour sessions, just in case any questions come up. And as we're waiting for this last final call for questions, if any of the program managers, technical leads, if you have any concluding remarks you'd like to make, you're more than welcome to make those now.
Ken here. I just had one thought. There's kind of two angles in especially in the other category. I was thinking a little bit about that other question. There's going to be relevance to the mission, and then there's going to be technical achievability. So, you know, a program person like me can look at relevance, like if this works, would we like it or desire it? But then there's the if this works technical review. If you're proposing something so radical that you can't show a logic chain of past experience or past progress that would lead us to think this is viable, that's a challenge. Where if you're proposing something like, hey, this aviation industry used this, or you know, this X-ray machine company used this or something, where there's a stepping stone, there you have a better chance. So that's a challenge if you're really proposing some other is showing, giving some indication that our technical reviewers can make an assessment of, does this have a chance? Thanks.
Thanks for that, Ken. All right, I don't see any other questions coming in after the final call for questions was made. So we can go ahead and conclude this office hour session. And I just want to thank all of you for joining and participating this morning. Thank you all.
Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Thank you, Anna. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.